The jungle breathes. It is a heavy, rhythmic respiration, thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth. But in the province of Laguna, on the island of Luzon, the air carries another scent. It is faint, yet unmistakable to those who have lived within its suffocating embrace for 3 long years. It is the scent of decay. It is the scent of slow, grinding starvation. We are in the Philippines. The date is February 1945. The war in the Pacific has turned. The American war machine, an unstoppable tide of steel and fire, is reclaiming the islands, island by island, beach by beach. General Douglas MacArthur has returned, just as he promised. But for the men, women, and children trapped behind the barbed wire fences of the Los Baños internment camp, liberation feels like a cruel mirage. It is a dream that fades with every setting sun, replaced by the gnawing pain of empty stomachs and the cold terror of the bayonet. To understand the miracle that is about to unfold, we must first understand the nightmare. We must walk through the gates of the former University of the Philippines College of Agriculture. Before the war, this was a place of learning, a place of growth. Now, under the occupation of the Imperial Japanese Army, it has been transformed into a holding pen for more than 2,000 souls. These are not soldiers, they are civilians. They are American businessmen, British teachers, Dutch engineers. There are nuns here, there are priests, and perhaps most heartbreaking of all, there are children, hundreds of them. By early 1945, the conditions inside Los Baños have deteriorated from difficult to desperate. The internees are living skeletons. Their skin is stretched tight over protruding bones, their eyes sunken deep into their skulls, haunted by a hunger that never sleeps. The Japanese camp commandant, a man whose indifference to human suffering has become the law of the land, has steadily reduced rations. Food is no longer a right, it is a weapon. The daily intake has dropped to less than 900 calories, then less than 700. Now they survive on a watery, tasteless mush of unhulled rice, a sludge that tears at their digestive systems, offering barely enough energy to keep a heart beating, let alone hope alive. They forage for slugs in the mud. They boil banana stalks. They dream of bread, vivid hallucinations of food that vanish when they wake to the harsh shouts of the guards. But hunger is not the only killer stalking the barracks of Los Baños. There is something darker in the air, a tension that has nothing to do with the war raging miles away and everything to do with the soldiers watching them from the guard towers. The Japanese army in the Philippines is losing. They are being pushed back, crushed by the advancing American divisions. And a losing army is a dangerous beast. Discipline is fracturing. Desperation is setting in. The internees whisper rumors in the dark, terrifying stories that have filtered through the bamboo walls. They speak of what happened in Palawan. They speak of prisoners of war herded into trenches, doused with gasoline, and burned alive by their captors just weeks before liberation could arrive. They speak of the massacres in Manila, where the streets ran red with the blood of civilians. Every prisoner in Los Baños knows the truth, even if they dare not speak it aloud. They are liabilities. To the retreating Japanese forces, these 2,000 starving civilians are mouths to feed, witnesses to crimes, and obstacles to movement. The logic of the enemy is cold and mathematical. It is easier to liquidate the camp than to abandon it. The order has not been given yet, or at least they pray it hasn't. But the guards have become more erratic. Their eyes hold a mixture of fear and malice. Trenches are being dug outside the perimeter. Are they for defense, or are they mass graves waiting to be filled? The clock is ticking, and it is ticking towards midnight. Far away from the misery of the camp, in the command tents of the American forces, a different kind of tension is building. Major General Joseph Swing, the commander of the 11th Airborne Division, stares at a map. The Angels, as his paratroopers are known, have been fighting hard. They are battle-hardened, weary, but their spirit is unbroken. However, the problem facing General Swing is not one that can be solved with brute force alone.
The Los Baños camp is located deep behind enemy lines. It is situated between the slopes of a mountain and the waters of Laguna de Bay. It is surrounded by Japanese garrisons. The main Japanese 8th Division, the Tiger Division, is operating in the area. A direct frontal assault by a large force would be a disaster. The moment the Japanese guards see a massive American column approaching, they will panic, and in their panic, they will execute the prisoners. It would be a slaughter. The Americans would arrive only to liberate a graveyard. General Swing knows he needs intelligence. He needs eyes on the ground. And he gets them from the unlikeliest of heroes. In the weeks leading up to mid-February, a daring escape takes place. An internee named Pete Miles, driven by the realization that death is imminent if they stay, manages to slip through the perimeter. He moves like a ghost through the jungle, evading patrols, driven by the desperate need to warn the advancing Allies. When he finally reaches American lines, his report chills the blood of every officer who hears it. They are starving, Miles tells them, and they are going to be killed. His testimony is corroborated by other shadows moving in the jungle. These are the guerrillas. The Philippines is not just a battleground for foreign armies, it is a land of resistance. Brave Filipino men and women, refusing to bow to the occupier, have formed lethal fighting units. One of the most formidable groups operating in the Laguna area is the Hunters ROTC. These are not ragtag bandits. They are organized, disciplined, and fierce. They have been watching Los Baños. They have been counting the guards. They have been mapping the machine gun nests. The intelligence paints a grim picture. The Japanese guards enforce a strict routine. At dawn, the off-duty soldiers gather for physical training. They leave their weapons stacked. They go through their calisthenics, unarmed, distracted. It is a window of vulnerability, a tiny, fleeting window. General Swing looks at his staff. He looks at Colonel Henry Mueller, his G2 intelligence officer. He looks at the commanders of his glider infantry and his parachute infantry. The plan that begins to form on the table is insanity. It is a plan that violates almost every standard doctrine of military safety. It relies on split-second timing. It relies on the coordination of three distinct forces moving by land, by water, and by air, all converging on a single point at the exact same second. If the paratroopers drop too early, they will be cut down in the sky by the guard towers. If they drop too late, the guards will have time to run to their weapons and turn them on the prisoners. If the amphibious tractors, the Amtraks, get stuck in the mud of the lake, there will be no way to evacuate the sick and the dying. If the guerrillas fail to cut the telephone lines or secure the perimeter, the main Japanese force stationed nearby will descend upon them and crush the rescue mission. It is a house of cards. One trembling hand, one mistake, and everything collapses. We have to go now, the decision is made. The date is set, February 23rd, 1945. The preparations begin in a frenzy of controlled chaos. The 11th Airborne is divided. A special task force is assembled. The 1st Battalion of the 511th Parachute Infantry Regiment is chosen for the vertical assault. These men are the tip of the spear. They will drop directly onto the camp, not near it, on it. They will jump from a terrifyingly low altitude, 400 to 500 feet, to minimize their time in the air, to give the enemy gunners no time to track them. At that height, there is no time for a reserve chute. If the main canopy doesn't open, you hit the ground in 3 seconds. There is no margin for error. Meanwhile, the 672nd Amphibian Tractor Battalion revs their engines. These are the Amtraks, massive, armored beasts capable of traveling through water and crawling up onto land. They are the lifeboats. Their job is to cross Laguna de Bay, a large, shallow lake, and crash through the camp walls to carry the internees to safety. But the lake is treacherous, it is patrolled, and the noise of their engines could give away the entire game miles before they arrive.
And then there are the guerrillas, the hunters ROTC. They are the knife in the dark. Their task is perhaps the most dangerous of all. They must infiltrate the area surrounding the camp before the attack begins. They must lie in the tall grass, inches from the enemy sentries, breathing shallowly, waiting for the signal. They must mark the drop zones. They must be the anvil against which the paratroopers will be the hammer. As the sun sets on February 22nd, the pieces begin to move. Imagine the scene on the shores of Laguna de Bay. The moon is obscured by clouds, offering a cloak of darkness. The reconnaissance platoon of the 11th Airborne, led by Lieutenant George Scow, slips into small boats. They are the pathfinders. They have to cross the black water, navigate through the fish traps in the mud, and link up with the guerrillas. Every splash of an oar sounds like a gunshot to their heightened nerves. They know that if they are discovered tonight, the raid is over before it begins. Inside the camp, the internees try to sleep, unaware that their fate is being decided in the dark. The hunger pains are a constant companion. Mothers hold their children close, whispering prayers to a God who seems to have forgotten this corner of the earth. The rumors have been particularly bad today. The guards have been shouting more than usual. There is a sense of finality in the air. Some of the internees have begun to hide their few precious possessions, burying diaries and letters, preparing for the end. Among the prisoners, there is a committee of internees who try to maintain order, but they are powerless against the bayonets. They watch the fires burning in the distance. Manila is burning, and they wonder if the flames will reach them next. They do not know that just a few miles away, men are checking their weapons. They are strapping on parachutes. They are painting their faces with camouflage grease. On the airfield, the engines of the C-47 transport planes cough to life. The paratroopers of Company B climb aboard. They are heavy with gear. They carry Thompson submachine guns, M1 Garands, grenades, and knives. But heavier than their gear is the weight of the mission. They have been told what is waiting for them down there. They have been told about the starving women. They have been told about the children. "Don't shoot the civilians," the officers barked during the briefing. "Identify your targets, move fast, kill everything that wears a Japanese uniform, but save the people." The roar of the engines drown out their thoughts. The planes taxi down the runway, lifting off into the pre-dawn gloom. They form up in the sky, a formation of metal birds carrying deliverance. Inside the fuselage, the red light glows. The soldiers hook up their static lines. The air is cold, rushing through the open doors. Below them, the jungle is a carpet of black ink. Simultaneously, on the lake, the Amtraks are moving. 54 of them. They are moving in a long, silent column. The drivers are straining their eyes against the darkness, following the compass headings. They have to time their arrival to the exact minute. If they hit the beach too early, the guards will be alerted. If they are late, the paratroopers will be slaughtered on the ground without support. And in the tall grass surrounding the camp, the Filipino guerrillas check their watches. They are soaked with dew. They are bitten by insects, but they do not move. They watch the Japanese sentries pacing the fence line. They can see the glowing embers of cigarettes in the guard towers. They can hear the murmur of Japanese voices. They are so close they can smell the enemy. They grip their rifles, their bolos. They are waiting for the sky to fall. The plan relies on a synchronized assault at 07 hours, 7 in the morning. That is when the Japanese garrison conducts their physical training. That is when they are gathered in the open, unarmed. As the sun begins to bleed gray light into the eastern sky, the tension reaches its breaking point. The C-47s are approaching the drop zone. The pilots are fighting the controls, flying low and slow. Inside the camp, the internees are waking up to another day of misery. They stumble out of their barracks for roll call. The Japanese guards are gathering in their white shirts and shorts, leaving their rifles stacked in neat pyramids. They begin their exercises. 1, 2, 1, 2. They have no idea that death is thundering towards them at 120 miles per hour. High above, the jumpmaster stands at the door of the lead plane. The wind whips at his face. He looks down. He sees the camp. He sees the smoke from the breakfast fires. He sees the unsuspecting enemy. The light by the door turns from red to green. Go! The shout is lost in the wind, but the movement is instinctual. The first paratrooper hurls himself into the void, then the second, then the third. White silk blossoms in the dawn sky. But these are not just parachutes. They are the opening notes of a symphony of liberation. At the exact same moment, in the tall grass, a whistle blows. The hunters, ROTC, rise from the earth like avenging spirits. And on the lake, the engines of 54 Amtraks roar to maximum power, churning the water into white foam as they charge the shore. The raid on Los Baños has begun. The sky above Los Baños does not just open, it shatters. At exactly 0700 hours, the silence of the morning is ripped apart by the sound of war in its purest, most chaotic form. For the Japanese soldiers standing in their neat rows, shirtless and unarmed, the world tilts on its axis. They look up, their eyes widen in a primal confusion. Above them, hundreds of white silk canopies bloom against the dawn light, descending with terrifying speed. These are not supplies. These are men, and they are falling right on top of them. Before the first paratrooper's boots even hit the dust of the drop zone, the ground erupts. The hunters' ROTC guerrillas, who have been lying motionless in the wet grass like vipers, unleash their venom. A volley of rifle fire tears through the morning mist. The Japanese sentries at the perimeter fences drop before they can even reach for their weapons. The calmness of the physical training session dissolves into a bloodbath. Panic, absolute blind panic, takes hold of the garrison. The Japanese soldiers break formation. They scramble desperately towards their stacked rifles, diving over each other, shouting orders that are drowned out by the roar of the incoming apocalypse. But the timing of the Americans is surgical. It is brutal. As the enemy soldiers reach for their guns, the angels of the 11th Airborne land among them. There is no time for standard landing procedures. The paratroopers hit the ground hard, rolling and coming up with their Thompson submachine guns already spitting fire. They are fighting at point-blank range. It is a brawl. It is a collision of bodies and bullets in the center of the camp. The air fills with the acrid smell of cordite and the screams of the dying. The Japanese garrison, caught completely off guard, is being shredded from the inside out. Simultaneously, the third claw of the attack strikes. The roar from the lake becomes deafening. The 54 Amtraks, those lumbering iron beasts, hit the shore. They do not stop at the beach. They rev their engines to a scream and crash through the bamboo barriers, splintering wood and crushing barbed wire beneath their heavy tracks. They charge into the camp like prehistoric monsters, their machine guns raking the guard towers, suppressing any enemy fire that tries to target the descending paratroopers. Inside the barracks, the internees are paralyzed by terror. For 3 years they have lived in fear of this moment. Hearing the gunfire, hearing the shouting, their first instinct is not hope, it is resignation. They believe the massacre has begun. They believe the Japanese have finally decided to execute them. They dive under their flimsy cots. They huddle together on the floor, covering the heads of their children, waiting for the bayonets to pierce the thin walls. They close their eyes and prepare to die. But then they hear voices.
These are not the sharp, staccato commands of their captors. These are deep, booming voices. They are shouting in English. They are shouting in American accents. Come out! Come out! It's the Yanks! We're here to get you out! A brave few crawl to the windows. They peer through the cracks. And what they see defies belief. They see giants. To these starving, emaciated people, the American paratroopers, well-fed, muscular, heavily armed, look like gods walking the earth. They see the Japanese guards fleeing or falling. They see the impossible occurring right outside their doors.
The realization hits them like a physical wave. They are not killing us. They are saving us. Chaos ensues, but it is a chaos of salvation. The internees begin to pour out of the barracks. Some are weeping uncontrollably. Others are laughing, a hysterical, manic laughter born of shock. Some are too weak to walk and have to be carried by their neighbors. They stumble towards the Amtraks, towards the soldiers who are waving them forward. "Move! Move! Get to the tractors!" the sergeants scream. But there is a problem, a deadly problem. The internees are disoriented. They're moving too slowly. Some are trying to run back inside to grab a suitcase, a diary, a hidden stash of jewelry, sad, trivial remnants of their past lives. They do not understand the urgency. They do not understand that the Tiger Division, thousands of Japanese soldiers strong, is only a few miles away. The sound of the battle will draw them in like sharks to blood. Every second wasted is a step closer to death. The American commanders make a ruthless decision. They have to get these people moving. They have to break their attachment to this prison. "Burn it," the order goes out. "Burn the barracks." The soldiers begin to torch the nipa huts. The dry bamboo catches fire instantly. The flames roar up, consuming the prison that has held these people for years. The heat is intense. The smoke billows black and choking into the sky. It works. The internees, seeing their shelters consumed by fire, panic and run towards the waiting Amtraks. It is a scene from Dante's Inferno. Figures running through smoke and flame, guided by the shouting angels of the airborne.
The loading process is frantic. The Amtraks were designed to carry combat troops, not hundreds of starving civilians. They are packed in like sardines. Women pass their babies up to the grimy, sweat-stained hands of the soldiers. Men who have not stood upright in months are hoisted over the metal sides. The vehicles are overloaded, sitting low in the water, their engines straining under the weight of human misery and human hope. But the fight is not over. The Japanese are rallying. Snipers are taking shots from the tree line. Bullets ping off the metal sides of the tractors. The paratroopers and the guerrillas form a defensive perimeter, a wall of lead and steel, holding back the inevitable counterattack. They fight with a ferocity that terrifies the enemy. They know that behind them, helpless civilians are exposed. They do not give a single inch of ground. One by one, the Amtraks turn around. They rumble back towards the water, churning up the mud. They splash into the lake, transforming from tanks into boats. As they move away from the shore, the internees look back. They see the camp consumed by flames. They see the black smoke rising to stain the blue sky. And they see the paratroopers, the rear guard, fighting their way back to the beach to catch the last ride out. The crossing of Laguna de Bay is a journey of agonizing tension. The Amtraks are slow in the water. They are sitting ducks. If Japanese aircraft appear now, it will be a slaughter. If Japanese artillery range them, they will sink. The internees hovel in the bottom of the steel hulls, listening to the drone of the engines, praying that the motor doesn't die. The soldiers manning the machine guns scan the sky, their eyes burning from the smoke, their fingers white on the triggers. Minutes stretch into hours. The shore of Los Baños fades into the distance, but the fear remains. The water is choppy, spraying over the sides, mixing with the tears of the liberated. A soldier offers a canteen of water to a young girl. She stares at it as if it were liquid gold. She takes a sip, and for the first time in 3 years, she tastes freedom. Finally, the far shore appears, Mamoted Beach. It is lined with American vehicles, ambulances, trucks, soldiers. As the first Amtraks grind up onto the sand, a cheer goes up. It is a ragged, broken sound, but it grows louder as more and more vehicles arrive. The ramp drops.
The internees stumble out onto the sand. They fall to their knees. Some kiss the ground. Others simply collapse, their bodies finally giving up the fight now that the adrenaline is gone. Hardened soldiers, men who have seen the worst of combat in the Pacific, weep openly as they help these skeletons walk. They see the ribs, the hollow eyes, the scars of abuse. They hand out chocolate bars, cigarettes, K-rations. "You're safe," a medic whispers to an old woman as he wraps a blanket around her trembling shoulders. "You're safe now, ma'am. The Marines are here. The Army is here. You're going home." Back at Los Baños, the last of the paratroopers and guerrillas board the final wave of Amtraks. They leave behind a ruin. The camp is destroyed. The Japanese garrison has been annihilated. Of the hundreds of enemy soldiers who woke up that morning, almost none remain. The Tiger Division arrives too late. They find only smoking ash and the empty cages of their victims. The raid is over. In the annals of military history, the raid on Los Baños stands as a singular achievement. It was complex, it was dangerous, it relied on the coordination of air, land, and sea forces in a way that had never been attempted before, and yet the result was nothing short of miraculous. Out of the 2,147 internees trapped in that hell, not a single one was killed during the rescue. Not one. It was the perfect raid.
But as we look back on this moment, as the dust settles on the history books, we must remember the cost. We must remember the risks taken. We must remember the young men who jumped out of airplanes at 400 feet, knowing they might not survive the fall, just to save strangers they had never met. We must remember the Filipino guerrillas who risked their families and their lives to gather the intelligence that made it all possible. And we must remember the resilience of the human spirit. The men and women of Los Baños survived 3 years of darkness. They survived hunger that turned men into animals. They survived the fear of execution. And when the walls of their prison came crashing down, they did not just walk out survivors, they walked out as witnesses. As the sun sets on February 23, 1945, the Amtraks sit silent on the beach. The fires in the distance have burned down to embers. The war is not over. There will be more battles. There will be more death before the final surrender. But for one day, in one corner of a burning world, humanity won. For one day, the good guys arrived exactly on time. And for 2,000 people, the sound of engines in the morning was not the sound of death, but the sound of life returning. This is the story of the day the sky rained soldiers. This is the story of the raid on Los Baños.